Okay, we're getting so excited. We're getting some answers for you. We've determined that you have a problem with chronic inflammation. This is likely a genetic condition setting you up for this. We can handle some inflammation, even chronically, but when it gets to be too much, it can affect most everything in our bodies. This is a condition I share with you, and would like to explain a few things about our recovery and prognosis, okay? Many of us who deal with a genetic propensity for inflammation can be triggered to become ill. This can be anything from a virus or a bacterial infection to an injury, extreme stress, physical or mental, or a vaccination. But some of us, like my daughter, have been sick to some degree their entire lives. This type of inflammation is hugely overlooked because most doctors look at traditional markers of inflammation, such as CRP and sed rate. Unfortunately, in most of us, these are normal. Instead, we must look at inflammatory cytokines to get answers, and our ability to measure cytokines is very limited right now. Traditional laboratories such as LabQuest or LabCorp or Quest in the United States only allow measurements of a couple of these cytokines, and normal ranges are still considered investigational. Many years ago, in one of our first studies, we did a huge panel of inflammatory cytokines, and in the majority of patients, these numbers were extraordinarily abnormal. We knew then that we needed to dig deep into inflammation, and you can benefit from our research. What we will do is start with the most conservative options for treatment first. If you can get on top of this inflammation with low-risk medications and supplements, that's always preferable. We can consider the big guns should conservative treatment be insufficient. We will also try to address everything that the chronic inflammation has caused, and that includes a propensity for abnormal intracranial pressure, increased risk clotting, circulation problems, fibrosis of organs and other tissue, and lowered immune systems, for example. When we put these things in place, then recovery can begin. Now, for most of us, recovery is slower than what we like, and it's quite up and down, unfortunately. I remember my journey. I could tell I was headed in the right direction, but on those down days, I got so discouraged. I remember on every down day, I thought, this is the worst I've ever been. I'll never recover. I think I'm starting over again. But then usually the very next day, oftentimes I was better again. The next bad day, I think this is the worst I've ever been. I'll never recover. I think I'm starting all over again. Eventually, I realized that I was going through those thoughts every time, yet my improvements were happening. I could tell that initially every week was better than the week before. Then every month was better than the month before. When I got to a year, the changes were dramatic. That is not an atypical journey, but please know that everyone's genes are a bit different, and everyone's journey to recovery is also different. Some patients are dramatically better rather quickly. Others struggle more. We can't always locate our genetic challenges, so please be patient with yourself. If you have a bad day, allow yourself that bad day to get a little done or to get nothing done, and know that it's a day to allow your body rest in order to recover. This is a real medical condition, and you will need rest in recovery time. This is not like recovering from something like the flu, where recovery is basically a straight line. No, it's much more like this, just up and down, but headed in the right direction. Sometimes it happens in baby steps too. That's also normal. I remember telling my husband that I knew I was getting better when I said I was thinking about going to a movie. He would say, oh, we're going to go to a movie. It's like, no. Later, I said I was actually thinking about going to a movie. He goes, oh, we're going to a movie. No, I wasn't there yet. But finally, I made it to a movie, my first one in a decade. But it was a slow process. It's important that you understand how there are many things out of your control with inflammation, which can be very discouraging. If you're exposed to germs and we're constantly fighting them, right, your inflammation will increase and down you'll go. If you're under mental stress, good or bad, inflammation goes up. if you're subjected to physical stress, everything from a procedure, surgery, a car accident, a broken bone, etc., inflammation goes up. Those of us who deal with abnormal intracranial pressure can even get worse when the weather changes because of the change in barometric pressure. That's very hard at first, but as your inflammation levels decrease, the ups and downs are much milder. Another thing worth mentioning is that most of us with inflammation become very sensitive to medications, foods, chemicals, you name it. As the inflammation is treated, our sensitivities go down. If we don't treat it, sensitivities can increase to the point that we're forced to live in a bubble, or we may end up with only a small handful of, say, safe foods. Hang in there with it. Your sensitivities will decrease as the inflammation goes down. Avoiding triggers when possible helps, but medication is also usually necessary. Someday we will have either the ability to change our genes or we'll have medications to more directly hit the source of the problem. I look forward to that and have Google Scholar alerts on a couple of medications that I could benefit, or I think could benefit some of us, but are in phase 2 clinical trials. This means it could be 10 years before the drugs are available, or they may never be available. You are now in the inner circle, though, so if we learn of something new or have an opportunity to do a treatment trial that you may be a good candidate for, we'd like to let you know if you're interested. Fortunately, there are medications available today that we can use as long as we understand their mechanisms of action. We'll talk you through it, okay? Hang in, my friends.